Something my spiritual director used to say to me all the time that really drove me nuts was, the heart has wisdom, the head knows not. Like all uber masculine men, I've been certain of two things: physical strength and intellectual prowess. These two things are the utmost importance to our survival, right? Intellectuals don't tend to put much stock in emotional intelligence, and we rely on our logic to make a lot of our decisions for us. Kind of a character flaw, right? While this can be a very useful practice, I can now, albeit somewhat begrudgingly, admit that I actually exhibited little to no control over my emotions by burying them under my intellectual ability. They just kind of ended up everywhere. Now, when we talk in circles and use our rhetoric to sidestep questions into our emotional well-being or to deflect attention away from our pain, we aren't being strong for the people around us. Our loved ones end up looking at us like, "Where's your sense of adventure, my guy?" And you're like, "Not exploring the depths of my emotional pain? Take that, Captain Ahab." Yeah, because that's exactly what we become when we're unable to regulate emotional responses to anxiety-producing stimuli. We turn into these out-of-balance maniacs to disregard everyone and everything while we seek vengeance from a seemingly unforgiving world. So that's what I want to get into today, is why we should learn to maintain balance between our emotional and intellectual aspects. Now let's rock with it and take that journey within. What up, though? It's your host, Justin, welcoming you back to the Mystical Mind State. Today we're looking at how our hearts provide balance for our minds and why the role of our hearts is so vital to path working. We can read about this stuff all day long. We can analyze texts, interject our opinions, argue about aspects of the divine feminine, project our nonsense all day. But what are we applying to our lives? How are we striving to make lasting changes? The golden rule of occultists is simple and plain. For every step you take towards the hidden wisdom, take 3 steps towards the perfecting of your own character. That's serious business, guys. Either we do the work or we argue over what the proper way to do the work is. I make this point because it's what slowed me down in my path working for years and years. Like me, a guy who found Sophia in my heart, was still mortified by the thought of really diving into the depths of my emotional pain. Sometimes I still won't gaze into them, into those instances when something triggers the absolute darkest parts of my path. And trust and believe, guys, I've seen, been the victim of, and done some truly evil things in my 40 years on Earth. We trauma babies get triggered pretty easily, yeah? Most of us go decades of our lives running in trauma loops with no clue why we're acting the way that we do. That's why meditation is such a fantastic tool. When we slow down and see into our minds, we eventually bring that awareness into our movements throughout the day. Then we become aware of all of the ways we self-sabotage because we've paused. And then we watch our triggers as they pop off, yeah? Now, when something triggers us, it's a chemical response, right? Those chemical responses come equipped with emotions. Those emotions arise within us because the body remembers other times when this sensation came up, and our thoughts get overwhelmed by those images, those memories, and those triggering things. It's not like we're pausing in the mix and going, "Oh my, that's the proof. We're triune beings, physicality, feeling, and thinking. Oh yeah." No, it's never a pleasure cruise, is it? But that's the reality of it. Our intellect steps in and says, this sensation is unacceptable and no good. Some of us shut down in our Ahab syndromes and close ourselves off to emotions and wander around unhealed. We shield ourselves from any other stimuli our bodies produce chemically, communicating with the world, and build a wall around our hearts. But the heart has wisdom, the head knows not. Let's look at one of the oldest texts on Jewish mysticism and expand on what that means. With 32 wondrous paths of wisdom, Yah, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the living God, omnipotent God extolled, dweller up above whose habitation is eternity, his name high and holy, engraved his name, covenanted, drilled, and created his universe in 32 mysterious paths of wisdom. Note that 32 is so cool we get it twice. Now, there's a ton of information in those opening lines, and I could Uriah Kaplan this one and run the gamut, but let's just play with the mathematics a bit. So my engineer friends. 32 is the 5th power of 2. The 10 Sephirot define a 5-dimensional space. The 32 paths correspond to the number of apexes on a 5-dimensional hypercube. In Genesis, it looks like this. God said appears 10 times. God made appears 3 times. God saw appears 7 times. The word God is used 12 times. 10 Sephirot, 3 horizontal paths, 7 vertical paths, 12 diagonal paths. The Sefer Yetzirah then goes on to state, he created his universe by 3 measures: number, text, and commentary, 10 Sephirot in the void, and 22 foundational letters. And this is what essentially lets us know how vital a role language and mathematics plays in our understanding of the universe. Both are seen as the foundational building blocks of existence itself. We can't even discuss union without discussing two, but yeah, non-dualism. Well, meditative Kabbalah has always dealt with the use of divine names, natures, letter permutations, and engraving techniques used to reach higher states of consciousness. It's a sort of yoga for the Israelites, but that's only because I lack a better way of saying that. But this is exactly what the Sefer Yetzirah is all about. We have a relatively well-preserved meditation manual with some strong magical overtones. It's divine mystery at its finest. Of course, all of that is good fun and shows us how relevant the scriptural account actually is scientifically, but we can also see that the creationists who take a literal translation from Genesis have completely ignored what the mystics have been saying for a couple of millennia. The mystics, on the other hand, extrapolate all this philosophical meaning from the tree of life and give us some really, really good insights. But what if I said the tree of life itself also serves as a model for not only our bodies, but how they connect to God as well? Kabbalists cite that the 32 paths of wisdom have their parallels in the human nervous system. 31 paths then parallel 31 pairs of nerves that emanate from the spinal cord. 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal, right? Now here's where it gets philosophical again. The 32nd and highest path corresponds to the entire complex of cranial nerves, which are 12 in number. Think 12 zodiacs, 12 disciples, 12 disciplines. As above, so below, as within, so without, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, the nervous system serves a double purpose. First, it transmits messages from the brain to every part of the body, allowing the brain to control all of the limbs and organs. Secondly, the nervous system transmits information from the various senses to the brain. Now, 4 of the senses, sight, hearing, taste, and smell, come directly through the cranial nerves, which are entirely in the brain. The impulses that come from the lower 31 nerves deal primarily with the sense of touch and feeling. Like the nerves, each of the 32 paths of wisdom is a two-way street. First, it's a channel through which the mind, the infinite Ein Sof, exerts control over creation. Secondly, it's also the path through which humankind can reach the divine mind. As the universe, so the soul. If one wants to attain a mystical experience and approach the mind, they must travel along the 32 paths. Okay, that's great, but what does this have to do with the heart? In Hebrew, the number 32 is written Lamed Bet. This spells Lev, the Hebrew word for heart. It's in the heart that the action of the mind manifests in the body. As soon as the influence of the mind ceases, the heart ceases to function. Medically speaking, that's what we call death. The heart also provides life force to the brain and nervous system. When the heart stops pumping, the nervous system can no longer function, and the mind no longer exerts influence over the body. The heart, therefore, serves as the causal link between the mind and body. It's for this reason that the Sefer Yetzirah calls the heart the king over the soul. This is why the mystical experience is sometimes referred to as the running of the heart. So when we say the wisdom of the heart is vital, it's because it is literally the source of the vital life force within our being. Sure, our minds may share consciousness with others and with the cosmos, but we eternally manifest what we feel we deserve. Now run all that back and consider how our nervous system transmits all of those hormones and chemicals from the physical worlds into our internal dialogues. El Shaddai is written into the very roller coaster ride we either love or hate, depending on how we take those chemical responses to heart. It's a hard one, but it's also a necessary lesson. So next up, we'll touch base on the unknowable one and why Moshe didn't even attempt to describe God's creative process. We'll touch base on the opening lines of the Torah and get really, really confused by the nature of existence together. Until then, keep breathing in light and living in love. 1.